Welcome. So, today we're going to talk about guardrails in senior care. So, what are guardrails? These are the quiet safety systems that you're going to put in place before everything turns into either another disappointment or another fall or a missed pill or even an emergency room visit. In the years that I have practiced medicine, as well as been a patient advocate, and many of my colleagues who are geriatric care managers install these guardrails into the lives of caregivers and their seniors. Now, the interesting thing about guardrails are they are not taking over the senior's life. They are about helping the situation where the senior can stay safe so that you can stop feeling like you have to watch every little thing. The best guardrails are so simple that no one even knows they're there. Think about the road. Think about driving along a switchback. You've got a guardrail, but you don't even pay attention to it. Your eyes are on the road. So the caregiving journey has these guardrails in place. That's what a guardrail is. Now, the next thing we have to look at is what we want to learn about today about these guardrails. Well, first, what do guardrails look like? What do they really mean in senior care? Why arguing usually does not solve the problem. Yes, we can raise our voices, but it's not the loudest voice in the room that gets the thing done, nor does it get it done very well. And typically what happens is we have to go back and apologize later when we did raise our voice. How quiet safety systems will lower your stress. Absolutely true. When you know you've got everything in place and no matter what they do, and they will do it, but you know that you've got the system there, you've got the plan there. That's the steady care plan because you have these guardrails in place. And know when a guardrail might be enough, that you don't have to plan everything out. You see, again, my job and every geriatric care manager's job is not necessarily to solve the immediate problem, but to show you how to solve your own problems. And part of that is the awareness and acceptance, what you cannot change, that we talked about in other videos. And those in those webinars, remember that we can't change aging, right? That's not in our control. And we can't change other people's behaviors. We can change, however, the relationships we have with them, depending on how we go about doing that. And so that is what we look for in senior care. Now, back to guardrails, because this is really part two after acceptance, awareness, and acceptance. And in guardrails, we put these in place so that no matter what happens, we've got that system, that plan already down. And then there are times, though, when the situation may need stronger, more visible steps. And we'll talk about those. So, one of the hardest parts of caregiving for a senior is hearing, I'm fine. So, you know something's wrong. Everybody knows something wrong, and they keep saying, I'm fine. And it's not true. So, when your eyes are telling you something different, where you notice that maybe they've missed doctor's appointments, they've forgotten how to get home when they're driving, they have forgotten conversations and they repeat themselves constantly. Their pills are left all over the floor or the counter. Refills don't need to be refilled because they've already got tons of pills. Little falls or stumbles, and they say, "I'm fine. That was just a board in the middle of the road or the middle of my walkway." Um, Strange decisions that they're making, and then there's maybe the house doesn't look as safe as it used to. This is, many times you'll see seniors, and oftentimes caregivers will say to me, their house was impeccable. Mom kept it so clean. Mom's house was in perfect shape. Dad didn't let anything go unattended. And now their house isn't looking so well. So then you start wondering, am I overreacting? Or am I the only one seeing the truth? Your gut is noticing something. They know there's a problem there. And you're going to start writing it down. You have to document. You have to keep documents on all of this. And I'm going to show you why when we get into leadership. and medical advocacy and all advocacy, I'm going to show you why documents are so important. But if you don't start writing down the little things that you notice, nothing is going to change and you're going to slide right into burnout. Constant worry is often a sign that the situation needs a system. Absolutely. When there is one thing you're stuck on and one thing you worry about, the stress is not only what happens, it is what you keep waiting for. You keep waiting for the next fall. You keep waiting for the next phone call, the next confusing doctor visit, the next family argument. You may be at work with your spouse or even trying to sleep and finally doing something for yourself that you really enjoy, and part of your mind is still watching for trouble. So you're never resting, you're never getting your cortisol levels down, and you can't lose weight and work out and take care of yourself when your cortisol levels are so high due to this kind of stress. This is the kind of worry that keeps people down. And it's a sign that the situation needs a system. Something's got to change. And it's not just another lecture. Something truly has to change. So, to the caregiver who keeps worrying, what we're really saying is if this is stressing you out over and over and coming to your mind over and over again, it's time to develop that system. Let's put it in place. Most families will start out with what's bothering them. The family caregiver is going to then remind the senior, correct the senior, and maybe even argue with the senior. But arguing often makes the senior defend themselves harder. They may feel embarrassed, afraid, or treated like a child. They're also very, very scared, very afraid of what you're trying to do. So instead of saying, "You're right, I need help," they say, leave me alone, I know what I'm doing." Very common for them to say that. They cannot say, "You're right, I need help." They cannot see it from your side. That's why guardrails are so important. They are hidden. The senior doesn't see them, but you know they're in place and you let the senior live their life. So when the conversation keeps failing, don't even bother with the same conversation. We change the approach. We change the system around the problem, putting up the guardrails and then approaching the senior in multiple different ways until they finally hear us. It's true that even in sales, the average person has to hear the same message 7 times before it finally clicks in their brain. Why do you think you see the same ad over and over and over again? Because if that ad is working, they're going to keep showing it to you so that you've seen it at least 7 times or more. And this I've seen over and over again, even in sales that I've been in, where I've shown the same thing over and over again, and people will say, "You never showed that to me before," when I knew I had. So it takes 7 times. All right, the 2 roads reminder. You may remember the idea I talk about in the 2 roads conversation. And I talked about this in, I believe it was the Smith family. And it might have been the Frank and Teresa family. But I use it a lot. And what your senior says and what keeps happening are 2 different things. So we're not going to reteach that. You'll learn it in the 12-week Steady Care Plan course. That's where I teach it, and I have you practice it. But guardrails begin when you stop getting stuck on the words and start looking at the pattern. If they say, "I take my pills," but the pills are left all over the place, you build around what is actually happening. A pattern tells you more than one conversation does. A pattern tells you through your documentation that we need a new system in place. It's not going to work for you. It's got to work for the senior. And they got to not even know that it is happening. So what is a guardrail? A guardrail is that quiet safety support that you put in place before things get worse. We'll talk about some of these guardrails. I'll give you examples. It does not take over your senior's life. It does not block every choice. It simply helps keep the situation from drifting into a bigger crisis. Just like a road guardrail, most of the time you barely notice it. But when things start to move in the wrong direction, it matters. So they protect us. Every day they protect us, and we don't even know they're there. But when it gets slippery outside and you're on sheer ice, you are sure glad you have that guardrail. That's what these do. It's a big part of senior care, and I've used it over and over and over again, hundreds of them, depending on, again, the problem you have. So guardrails are not boundaries. These are two different things. Guardrails usually work quietly in the background. I think you have that. But boundaries are usually seen, heard, or felt. When we tell our loved one that they can no longer drive, that's a boundary. That's a boundary we put up there, and we're not stepping over the line, and we're not letting them step over the line. Period. That is a boundary. So when we tell them, well, we'll go over several examples of boundaries when we get to schedules and boundaries in the 12-week steady plan course. And you'll see what's a boundary, and then you'll see the difference between a boundary and a guardrail more explicitly. But a boundary is where you put your foot down, where you say you can't live in your house anymore, where it's unsafe for you, or it's unsafe for others. There's a boundary right there. But guardrails, we can put up guardrails all day long, and our senior won't even know they're there. I'll give you an example. A note to the doctor is a guardrail. The senior doesn't know that you're handing that note. You're sneaking that note over to the doctor. The doctor is reading it, and it's everything that the senior is not going to tell the doctor. We'll talk more about that, and I'll show you how to do this in every single situation. I will show you, especially in the 12-week study course, we take your senior and we look at all the important things that every doctor needs to know, and we point those out. So instead of saying, I cannot keep doing this every day, that's more of a boundary. We put up these guardrails, and we can do them every day. The senior just doesn't know that we're doing them, so they're not going to argue with us about them. Both of them are needed, but they are definitely not the same tool. So we use the guardrails when a quiet system can reduce the risk. We use a boundary when the problem needs a clear limit. A boundary is you can't have your money anymore because you're giving it away to people in foreign countries and they're scamming you. That's a boundary. There's no guardrails there. We're going to take the money away, period. We're going to assign a guardianship, or we're just going to get a hold of it. All right. So this is the difference, and this is why I address both of them, because there are times when we do have to use boundaries. We'd love to only use guardrails, but we can't. We have to keep the patient safe. The senior safe. All right. The doctor visit that keeps going nowhere. Over the years of practice, and especially in geriatric care, as an advocate, I've seen a lot of patients who do not have the right doctors for whatever procedure they need or specialty they need. I've also seen it as advocacy where seniors will get the same doctor they've had for 100 years, and the doctor is a good old boy and doesn't pay any attention to what the senior is saying. And the senior is more of a friend that comes in and they laugh and they joke around together, and nothing gets done. And you're frustrated because the senior comes home and says, I had a great visit with the doctor. Well, did the doctor do anything? What did the doctor say about that sore on your leg? What did the doctor say about the fact that you can't walk? Oh, he says, I'm fine. He said, I'm good, no problem. Just keep living my life. Everything's in control. When you and I both know better. So is that a bad doctor? Not necessarily. What has happened here is we have missed the ability to give the doctor the true picture. Same thing with the pharmacist. Pharmacist doesn't know the whole story. The doctor doesn't know the whole story. And so these are guardrails that we can easily put up. So when you're taking your father, let's say, to the doctor, and he's fallen twice, he's missed his pills, he's confused every evening, or he won't eat, he's getting up at night and eating in the refrigerator, wandering, he won't use an adult diaper, and the doctor asks, "How are you doing?" And your father smiles and says, "Fine," and cracks a couple of jokes. And you sit there thinking, that is not true. But you do not want to embarrass him. So the visit's going to end, nothing changes, and you leave worried, more worried than even when you came in. The doctor cannot solve problems that he's never heard. He or she is going on what the patient says. And yes, I have had sons and daughters bring patients into my family practice and internal medicine practice. And I have said what's going on, talking to the senior, and they will not say one word. Not one word to me. And that is when I have to get up and make an excuse as to why I have to go out. And then I have to call the caregiver out of the exam room and have a talk at another location and say what is really going on here. So that's what this is about. You have to turn around and figure out what the whole story is. So we'd like to solve that. So let's look at the next slide and figure out how we're going to do this. Okay, the doctor note guardrail. This is not a boundary. We're not going to go in and say, here's the list and you have to give it to your doctor. Nope. We sneak it to the doctor. So one guardrail is a list. And you write down what is really happening. You don't write emotional. You say, last Thursday, he asked me the same question 3 times in a row, and he at 5 o'clock. Or he tripped and fell 3 times this week, but grabbed hold of something. He does not use his walker. He was very confused at the last visit and asked me several times what you said. His legs have been swelling, but I noticed that is one of the side effects of gabapentin. Things like that. So you put down what you know. Now, I will tell you an interesting story, and I may have already told you this, but I was working with a patient who was an alcoholic. He drank a half a handle of vodka every 2 days. No, he drank a handle of vodka every 2 days. His liver was fine, kidneys are great, heart is in good condition, and he's on probably 23 medicines, which he shouldn't be on at all. 23 medicines, no more than 10, but 23. And the doctors had no clue. So the other thing is he smokes. So he smokes and he drinks and he drives. So I made a list of everything, all the bad habits, the tripping, the falling, the pain, what his pain levels really are, because he would never tell the doctor what his pain levels really were, the diarrhea, the loss of bladder control, everything that was wrong. And one day, as we're walking out of the office, he says to me, how's the doctor know about my drinking? And I said, that's a really good question. I said, you know what? It must be in your medical chart. Well, that's how you get away with it. And HIPAA says, a lot of people think, well, I can't talk to the doctor. Yes, you can tell the doctor anything. You can write all of this down and you can tell the doctor anything you want. The thing is, the doctor can't tell you unless they have permission to share it with you. The doctor cannot tell you, but you can tell the doctor. And that's how you give the doctor the whole picture. And so that's what we do. We practice the most important things and we help the doctor to see the whole picture. That's a guardrail. The senior doesn't need to know it, and the senior will not see it in the medical chart. We'll go into detail on that later, especially in the 12-week course. We go into how the senior will never see it in the medical chart, but it's very doable. But this lays the responsibility on the doctor. Now the doctor knows something else is going on. Now the doctor understands that he or she should be doing something about this because they've got the piece of paper. They got the date on it and they got the list of things that are wrong. And they should do something about it. So this is especially useful when the senior forgets or minimizes or does not tell the truth. And the true secret about this is that it's going to alleviate your pressure because you're not the only one now that knows all this. You don't have to be. You have now given this to the doctor, and you have given it to the pharmacist, and you might have given it to the physical therapist, and you might have given it to the home care agency if they come in, and you might have given it to the attorney. So everybody has the whole picture, and you're not just holding on to it. That is a guardrail, and a wonderful one at that. Next is a medication guardrail. Medication problems are one of the clearest places to use guardrails. Your senior may say that they are taking everything correctly, but you find that that's not so. So you organize a pill organizer, a medication list, a pharmacy review, a refill check, or simply a tracking sheet. Or again, documentation. All of these are guardrails. So, like I said, with every single situation that I've ever come across, I can have multiple guardrails in place, not just one. But now I don't have to be totally responsible. I've got tools in my tool belt and people in my tool belt that can share the responsibilities with me. So you don't have to ask, did you take your medication? Look for proof that the system is working. Now, many times people say they get very upset because the seniors aren't taking their medications as they should be. Well, you can go to the pharmacist and you can say, hey, what happens if they miss this pill? And usually nothing's going to happen. Now, there are some medications that they really shouldn't go off of on their own, or they shouldn't stop suddenly. But you will know that. You will know when that happens. And what do? You do a guardrail. You send a message over to the doctor and say they're not taking this medication consistently, and it's very dangerous for them to stop it. What do you suggest we do? Do we change them to a new medication, or do we take them off it completely? Need an answer. Let the doctor decide that. That's not your wheelhouse. So medication guardrails. Next is the fall risk guardrail. Falls are another place where guardrails truly matter. Many seniors say, oh, I just tripped, even when the risk is growing. Well, you can do things about this. The fall guardrail may be better lighting, throwing out those throw rugs, which do nothing but throw seniors, placing a chair near the shower, using a grab bar. You put the grab bars in. And they come in and they say, I don't want those grab bars in there. Well, I kind of got them in there anyway, and I'm going to just leave them there for now. And you just let it drop. If they want to take them off, they can take them off. But I promise you they won't take them off. Pretty interesting. What about the choking tool? If they start to choke, do they have a choking tool? Seniors are very good at choking because as they get older, their spine and their neck tends to pull their head forward, and they almost have to eat like they're looking down in order to get the food up and over and down their esophagus. And so they can choke. So that the choking, I can leave a reference for you on this, the best one to get, but there are choking tools that are great. that work very well to get the food out. Okay. Besides the Heimlich maneuver, especially if you weigh 90 pounds and your husband or your dad weighs 250 pounds, it's very hard to put somebody over a chair and try to get the food out. So a lot of these things you just put in place and you ignore them. You just, when they say, I don't want that, you just ignore it. Say, okay, and just let them. They'll use it eventually, but they got to get used to it first. That's a guardrail. Another is the information guardrail. This is extremely important, especially as we start talking about family communication, because I believe that every family member ought to know what's going on. Now, they may not want to know. They may not read the emails. They may not listen to your voicemails. I don't care. You let them know anyway, so they can't come back and bite you later. So this is the right information, and it's ready and in place before a crisis. We talk about crisis at the end of the 12-week steady care plan because there are really only 4 crises, as I've said before, that cause 80% of the problems in the downhill for the senior. But this information is everything that you can give the other siblings. Now, I know that mom and dad sometimes say, don't tell your sister, don't tell your brother, etc. Don't tell your aunt what I'm going through. Not okay. That's a boundary. It could be a guardrail too. But if you say to your loved ones, you know what? I don't keep secrets. I am going to tell them and I'm going to share with them what's going on. I can't keep a secret because it's not fair to them. And I have to live with them. That's a boundary. You're coming right out and saying it. But a guardrail is slipping the note to your brother and sister and not letting your mom know that you did that. Now you run into a moral thing here if you promised your mom that you wouldn't do that. I say up front, just be honest about it and say, I don't do that. Everybody's going to know. But back to the doctor's names, the pharmacy, medication list, insurance cards, allergies, diagnosis, legal contacts, emergency numbers, hospital discharge papers, as well as, of course, the healthcare directive that has to be in place, the living will, if you will, so that when something happens, you're not digging through drawers trying to figure it out. Everything is in a notebook, and everybody has access to this because you sent it to them. They have it in an email. They can put it in a folder, and they can go find it there. All right, the family proof guardrail. This is very similar. Sometimes the guardrail is not for the senior. It's for the family. If your siblings do not see what you see, stop trying to convince them and telling them with your emotions. Keep simple notes, the dates, the falls, the missed pills, the doctor instructions, the strange behaviors, the unpaid bills, the safety concerns. All of these go onto a 1-page and you email it to them. Again, they can choose to open it or choose not to. But these are the things, just like the doctor's note, that you are going to give them. So they have access to it if they want to read it. The record does not guarantee agreement, but it keeps you from sounding dramatic when you're actually reporting the facts. And when they call you and say, what do you mean that dad fell 3 times? Oh yeah, he falls. Then they might jump on the bandwagon and say, that's unacceptable. Say, well, he doesn't hear me. Maybe he'll hear that sibling instead. Maybe he'll do something. I've seen this over and over again in medical practice where I trained my caregivers to give me a note before every single visit. They had to give me a note. And once they started doing that, and I saw that Mr. Smith was falling and not using his walker, I'll say, you know what, you need to use your walker. And he'd say, oh yeah, okay, I can do that. And I say, well, how many times a day will you promise me you're going to use it? Once? Yeah, I'll use it once. I said, okay, I want you to use it once. I said, but first of all, I want you to get a walker that works for you. I said, I want to make sure that a physical therapist measures you and gets you the right walker. Oh, I have a walker. Well, then let's make sure it's the right height for you. Because seniors get shorter as they age. So just because they got a walker 15 years ago, it doesn't mean it's a good walker anymore. And some seniors now need a walker with a seat, whereas others don't. So we got to look at changing out walkers from time to time. All right, when guardrails are not enough, let's talk about that. And I've mentioned it before. When guardrails are helpful, but they're not magic. Some problems become too dangerous for quiet support alone. The unsafe driving, the repeated falls, the serious medication misuse, the refusal of urgent care, dangerous living conditions, or worsening confusion may need a stronger step. And that's going to mean a clear boundary. That's doctor's intervention. That's going to be legal guidance, home care, assisted living, or emergency help. And that's when you have to say, if you don't let the home care agency in so that they can help me, not help you, so that they can do your laundry, so that they can make your bed, so that they can prepare your food. If you don't say help, you give them a specific task. So they can clean your home, then you're going to assisted living where they'll automatically clean your home. That's a boundary. We're taking away your keys because you do not drive safely anymore, and you're going to hurt somebody. Period. You can't ride your bike anymore because you won't wear a helmet. All of us know that. I mean, we were brought up to wear helmets. That's it. What are some of the other things we can do? If their medications are keeping them alive and missing a pill here and there is not going to kill them, but if it does and they're not doing what they need to do, then it's time to go to assisted living where they will give them their medication, make sure they take it. So boundaries are the direct approach. Many caregivers find it very difficult to set clear boundaries. But when they ship over to their siblings or their children, adult children, that I need help and here's what I'm documenting, it's usually the whole family that comes together and sets those boundaries. And it's somebody in the family they hear, if not the doctor. If you don't give a note to the doctor can't tell the patient what to do. Okay, so how to start without overwhelming yourself. You're going to start with one problem. You do not start with 100 of them. You start with one, and you start documenting just that one problem. That's it. And sometimes it's just putting a line on a piece of paper. How many times did they ask you the same question? Put a line. You put a line. You put a line. So you might have 7 lines that day on that date. How many did they eat today? No, they didn't really eat today. They're not sustaining. They're losing weight. So they're not getting the food they need to. There are certain things that we know about healthy aging. We know that we want to stay fit. We know that we want to eat. We want to retain our muscle mass. We know that we want to be social. And we want to stay out of the doctor's office, for sure. And off as many medications as possible. So we want to stay active, healthy, exercise, socialize, eat well, right? So 3 basics: eating, socializing, and exercising. I mean, that's where your healthiest seniors come from, those 3 basics. So what about socialization? Are they socializing? And again, we can put up some guardrails that help them keep socializing, and they don't even know it. We can call a friend and say, do you mind calling mom today? Do you mind going to visit mom today? And keeping them social. We can do that. That's another guardrail. So look at what number one thing is. Look at just what one thing might be that's really bothering you and start putting up a guardrail. What is it? Something you can do behind the scenes that they don't even know about. What if it was getting that choking thing? What if it was checking when they're missing a lot of pills, going to the pharmacist and saying, hey, what happens if they miss these doses? Because they're missing them. Is that going to cause any real problem? Yes, it is. No, it's really not. And then another guardrail. You send a message over to the doctor, drop off a note, say, put this in the folder. The doctor needs to see this, but I don't want the senior to. And they can do that because the medical records you get online are not the same medical records the doctor keeps. A lot of people think they are. They are not. There are two sets of records. Let's put it that way. Two books, two sets of books. Okay. So what we learned today, what guardrails really mean, they're kind of behind the scenes. Why arguing usually does not solve. You're going to confront them. You're not going to get them over on your side. We're going to back up, put guardrails in place. We're going to reapproach in different ways until they finally agree or we go to boundaries. How quiet safety systems lower your stress. When you know you've got these guardrails in place, don't worry about it. Let the doctor worry about it. Let the lawyer worry about it. Let home care agency worry about it. You don't have to worry about it anymore. How to know when a guardrail may be enough, may not be enough, I should say. May be enough or not. What is it that's taking your stress level down to zero? If that guardrail is in place and taking your stress level down to zero, you don't need your geriatric, you don't need anybody else. You've got everybody else in place. When you need a geriatric care manager, when you need a patient advocate to come in, maybe in the hospital, or maybe when it's time for them to pass and you're not handling it well. Geriatric care managers and patient advocates are wonderful at explaining things like that. Or there's a crisis, unexpected event that's occurring. That's a crisis. Okay, and when the situation may need a stronger, more visible step, then we put in those boundaries. So that is basically what you're learning now is guardrails. Now, I'll see you in the next video, and we'll talk more, and especially in the 12-week steady care plan. We practice putting these guardrails in place. We add more, we take others out as the person continues to age. So at no time are we ramped up in stress because we have our guardrails in place. It's a wonderful thing to know that we don't have to be 24/7 on because our guardrails are taking care of what we need to take care of. So take care, and I'll see you in the next video.